Hello and welcome to That's English.
Hello. In our last programme, Walter and Jean talked about some of their personal experiences. Algunas de sus experiencias personales.
Jean described the first time they met.
Do you like my party? I asked.
Yes.
He said, as he was reading the book. Next, I asked him, would you like to dance?
No, thank you.
And then I asked him, do you like going to the cinema?
Yes.
Finally, I asked him, would you like to go to the cinema with me? That's when he put his book down. We met the next evening.
Hoy vamos a escuchar a varios ingleses hablando de sus experiencias personales. Más adelante, conoceremos a una familia inglesa, los señores Hunt y sus hijos. Pero primero, vamos a oír a la gente de la calle.
How did you meet your partner?
¿Cómo conociste a tu pareja? Varias personas contestaron a esta pregunta en la calle. No te preocupes si no entiendes todo lo que dicen. Para ayudarte, te explicaremos el significado de algunas palabras y expresiones nuevas que vayan saliendo.
So, how did these people meet their partners?
I met my husband at college. I was doing teacher training, and my husband was doing a degree in sociology.
I met my husband at a youth club where I was playing chess and I won, and he asked me out. We got married 3 years later.
I met my husband at a school concert. I was 15 and he was 17.
I met my girlfriend at the local gymnasium.
I met Helen, my girlfriend, a few months ago actually in a local nightclub.
A friend introduced me to my wife about 10 years ago, and about 5 years ago we got married.
I met my husband 10 years ago at university, and we were friends for a long time, about 8 years. But last year we got married.
Se casaron el año pasado. It took them quite a long time to get married, didn't it? They were friends for 8 years before they got married.
And another man there knew his wife for 5 years before they got married. Se tomaron el idilio con calma, ¿verdad? Por lo general, en Gran Bretaña, la gente no espera tanto tiempo para casarse. Pero primero vamos a fijarnos en una expresión muy frecuente que significa me pidió que saliera con él.
I met my husband at a youth club where I was playing chess and I won, and he asked me out.
How did you meet your partner, Vanessa?
Oh, it was very exciting. I was in Paris, by the Seine. Estaba en París, a la orilla del Sena. I met a handsome stranger. Me encontré con un desconocido muy atractivo.
Really?
No, actually, I met him in a pub in Manchester. But Paris is more romantic, isn't it?
The smell of Paris by night. So romantic. So exciting. I was alone in Paris. I was sitting in a cafe. I asked the waiter for a cup of coffee. When he came back with the coffee, he had a letter for me. Who was the letter from? I didn't know. I looked around the cafe. Then I saw him. He was smiling at me. I smiled at him. the handsome stranger came to my table.
What perfume are you wearing?
He asked. Paris by night, I said. He looked into my eyes. He took my hand, and we walked off into the night. We stood by the river Seine.
My darling.
Mon Cherry.
Madame!
Then we heard shouts.
Allô, s'il vous plaît.
We saw the waiter. He was angry.
Madame,
He shouted.
you haven't paid for your coffee.
Ah, Paris by night. The perfume's so romantic, so exciting.
¿Recuerdas la forma verbal de la que hablamos en el programa anterior? ¿Te has dado cuenta de que aparecía en el anuncio?
I was alone in Paris. I was sitting in a cafe.
I was sitting in a cafe.
Then I saw him. He was smiling at me.
He was smiling at me. ¿Te acuerdas? Esta forma se utiliza para describir dos sucesos que tienen lugar al mismo tiempo.
There are more examples in the song we're going to hear. It's about a ghost, un fantasma.
While I was walking home last night, I saw a ghost completely white. This ghost was coming down the street. He had no hands, he had no feet. His face was round just like the moon, and as he went, he sang this tune. Ooh, ah, it's your turn soon. While I was walking up the stairs, the awful ghost was waiting there. I turned and shouted, "Leave my home, please go, I want to be alone." And now afraid and cold I lie in bed and wait and watch and cry. Ooh, don't want to die.
Now we're going to meet the British family we've talked about before. Here they are.
I'm John Hunt, and this is my wife, Bronwyn.
This is my daughter, Harriet. This is my sister, Eleanor.
This is my sister, Charlotte.
And this is my dad.
We're going to the home of Mr. and Mrs. Hunt.
Durante los próximos meses irás conociendo a la familia Hunt y esperamos que a la vez aprendas también un poco sobre la vida familiar británica.
Mr. and Mrs. Hunt live in Bushey, which is a town north of London. They talk about Rickmansworth, a small town, and Devon, a county, un condado, in the southwest of England. While you're watching, think about this question. Where was Mrs. Hunt living when she met her husband? ¿Dónde vivía Mrs. Hunt cuando conoció a su marido?
We met in 1967 and we married in 1969.
Yes, that's a long time ago.
I was living in Bushey when I met John.
And I was living in Rickmansworth.
2 years after I met John, I decided to marry him.
I was waiting inside the church for Bronwyn. It was a wonderful wedding.
I was wearing this wedding dress. My mother made my wedding dress.
And I wore a suit.
After our wedding, we went away on honeymoon. We went to Devon.
In 1973, we were living in another house in Bushey, and we bought this house in the same year.
That was 21 years ago.
It was expensive, but we liked it very much.
Harriet was born in 1977.
And Eleanor was born in 1979.
And Charlotte was born in 1981.
Charlotte nació en 1981.
And the answer to our question, where was Bronwyn living when she met John, her husband?
I was living in Bushy when I met John.
I was living in Bushy. There's that useful verb form once again. I was living.
¿Te fijaste en quién tomó la decisión de casarse?
2 years after I met John, I decided to marry him.
2 años después de conocer a John, decidí casarme con él. Echemos un vistazo a algunas palabras relacionadas con el matrimonio.
First, marry, casarse con. I decided to marry him.
Then, get married or marry significa casarse. Mr. and Mrs. Hunt got married in 1969.
And now they are married. Están casados. They've been married for 25 years. Llevan casados 25 años.
Marriage, matrimonio. They've had a very happy marriage.
Wedding, boda. It was a wonderful wedding.
Fíjate en cómo utiliza esta expresión un personaje que mucho me temo está a punto de aparecer. To waste the whole day. Perder todo el día.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the funniest man in the world, Danny Dodds.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are you married? My son got married 3 weeks ago. I told him, son, get married early in the morning. Why should I get married early in the morning, Dad? He said. Well, I told him, if the marriage doesn't work, you haven't wasted the whole day. I told him, get married early in the morning. If the marriage doesn't work, you haven't wasted the whole day. Eh? But he had a bad honeymoon, a very bad honeymoon. Rebecca, his wife, wanted to go to Spain, and he wanted to go to Scotland. They didn't speak for 2 weeks. Well, he was in Scotland, and she was in Spain. They didn't speak for 2 weeks. He was in Scotland, she was in Spain. No, but it's a marvelous thing, marriage. All marriages are happy, don't you think? It's living together afterwards that causes all the problems, eh?
Menuda parrafada, ¿no? Será mejor que lo oigamos otra vez.
All marriages are happy, don't you think?
Todos los matrimonios son felices, ¿no creen?
It's living together afterwards that causes all the problems, eh?
Es convivir después lo que provoca todos los problemas.
Maybe, but that's all we have time for.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.
His face was round just like the moon, and as he went, he sang this tune. Ooh, ah, it's your turn soon.